Hello, everyone. Welcome to We Love Soaps TV. I'm Roger Newcomb.
I'm Damon L. Jacobs. Roger, we've been presenting this series with Emmy Award-winning writer Tom Casiello, and this part I find particularly exciting because Tom and I were watching Days of Our Lives during the same era, and also just fantasizing about what kind of stories we would tell if we became writers. Well, Tom actually made that happen. Right. He was part of the writing team on Days of Our Lives between 2006 and early 2008. He's going to share with us some of the stories that he helped to write, some of the dialogue he took part in, and some of the storylines that we never got to see because of the writer's strike in early 2008. This is fascinating for me, so stay tuned. So then what came after that?
What came after that was I got hired almost immediately at Young and the Restless under Lynn. Mm-hmm. And I lasted 4 episodes.
Why?
There was a lot of writer turnover at YNR. Uh-huh. I mean, I think there were something like 38 writers who were hired and fired during that year.
During Lynn Marie Latham's, who's
I think they just
classic.
They just didn't. They wanted a very specific kind of writer, and they just
meaning.
I don't know what that. I don't have no idea.
Okay,
I
you don't know, but it wasn't you.
It wasn't me.
Okay.
It wasn't me. But I was in good company. There were a lot of us who were hired and fired that year.
Honk, have you been fired by Lynn Marie Latham?
And Hogan had actually been hired at Days that summer.
Mm-hmm.
And Hogan had called me, and he was like, "Buddy, I know you know Days. I know you were an NBC guy. Come over." And I said, "I just got hired at YNR. Hogan, I'm sorry." So when I got let go from YNR, I called Hogan immediately and said, "So I didn't last long at YNR. What do you think? You still something open?" And he said, I will in November or December, I forget. Yeah, it's fine. So I said, great, let's do it. So I just took a couple months off to kind of relax and regroup, and because that was a tough year for me, because disengaging from one life and being let go. That was the first time I was ever actually fired from a job. I'd never been fired before at the end of my contract. Like, World Turns had given me their blessing to look for other work, and I did while I still worked there. One Life fired me. So I was going through that, and, which was actually, in the grand scheme of things, you'll like this, with the arrogance of youth that happens when you're winning an Emmy, I needed a bit of a fall. And so 2006 was kind of my fall year, and it was good. Yeah. It was good for me. I got fired, and then I got fired again from YNR under Lynn, and then Hogan said you have to wait a few months, and I was like, okay, so I went back to work in retail for a few months just to kind of do something during the day. I just met my partner now, actually. Mm-hmm. So now looking back on it, it was a really tough year, but I needed that year to kind of...
It's humbling for you.
It was good, but it was good humbling. It was good humbling. And then I got hired at Days, which was like...
Okay, now Days was a show you loved as a kid.
I loved it as a kid.
Jennifer and Frankie Hopenbo, Kim and Shane,
yep.
Steve and Kayla.
I was up there with another world for me. And
yeah.
I absolutely loved it. I mean, I had never even considered Days as an option because Jim Riley hires Jim Riley people. Like Bill Bell Sr. hired Bill Bell Sr. people. He had his own people. Jim Riley was kind of the same way. Mm-hmm. So he hired his people at Passions and Days, and they were kind of separate worlds in the rest of daytime that kind of people kind of jumped from show to show. So I never even thought of Days as an option. And I got hired at Days, and I was ecstatic. I was so happy, and I wrote my first episode in December. It aired in February, and I got like no notes on it. It was like a dream. I'd never ever in my life written a breakdown that didn't get any notes. I'm trying to remember. It was Kayla and Marlena. I remember there were Kayla and Marlena scenes, and it was right after they found out Steve had been brainwashed. I don't remember.
Was this like in a car and they were driving off to save him somewhere?
No. It was in Marlena's penthouse.
Okay.
And it was Marlena talking about what the DeMiras did to her. Uh-huh. With the whole Meliswin, all that stuff. Without mentioning that, because there are certain things you're not allowed to mention.
So So at that time in Days' history, you weren't allowed to mention the Riley grand.
No, you can mention what happened, but it's just about how you word it. You can't really say, well, when I was in Meliswin, but you could say like the DeMiras, brainwashed me, and Marlena got to talk about Kayla about what it was like for her. So be patient with Steve because Steve's going to go through this.
Were they allowed to talk about the Gemini twins by that point?
We couldn't bring them up.
Yeah.
I brought up Rex and Cassie a few times, and I got taken out. But yeah, it was such a great experience because I was writing, and they were like, "This is great, we love this," and I had never had that kind of experience before.
That was around the time too of Sammy Lucas's wedding.
That was the one. That was the first blog entry I ever wrote. Was Sammy and Lucas's wedding reception. So I wrote for days for 4 months. Wait, hold on. I got hired in December. In May. Yeah, in May we wrote the wedding, and I knew for a fact that there were things going on way above us.
Things?
Well, Hogan's long stories are being changed. There was the mandate that John and Marlena and Bo and Hope couldn't be played, and so he had to change the whole
Well,
long
let's
story.
talk about that, because there seemed to be a bit of a battle that was going on in the press at that time between Hogan and the powers that be. Hogan would come out very publicly, I want to see these couples, I want to see the veterans on screen, I want John and Marlena, I want Hope and Bo, and yet what we saw on screen was not what he
Here's
said.
all I know.
What happened?
I don't know everything. I mean, again, and here's the other thing that the New York shows, all the writers are around a conference table, like you would picture in a writer's room with a big dry erase board, and you're throwing the ball around, and you get your feet on the table, and it's all, the LA shows, everybody's scattered around the country, and so you're on conference calls, and it's all done over email and conference calls from your own home.
Wow, that's interesting. Okay.
So, although I think Days might do it around a table now, I'm not sure, but so I'm living in Brooklyn. I have no. I mean, all I know is that when I got hired, the writer's assistant sent me copies of Hogan's long stories that he turned in that got approved when he got hired.
Mm-hmm. Which had to do with the veterans.
Yeah, everybody. Yeah, there was. Yeah, absolutely. There was much more. The Sammy and Celeste story was actually a Sammy and Lexi story because they hated each other, and it was Sammy and Lexi covering each other's lies. It wasn't Sammy and Celeste. Bo and Hope were more involved. John had actually died. EJ had actually killed John.
Yeah.
In the original long story.
Right.
But yeah, it was all. All I know is that by the time we were writing them in break, so I got these long stories and they were approved, and then things. We were told, yeah, we have to drag this out another few months. Yeah, this got killed. Yeah, Lexi's had the story. Now it's Celeste. Yeah, it's which I love Tanya Boy. This is nothing against Celeste at all, but it was just more and more things were changing as we were writing it. I don't know what happened or exactly what the conversations were. And then there was that you can't play the Carvers, you can't play John and Marlena, you can't play Bo and Hope, you can't play the Lockharts, you can't,
Did they ever say why, or just said, no, you can't?
I never heard why.
Okay.
I never heard why. So things were changing. You could tell things were changing, but I was having the time of my life. I really was. Like, obviously there were things where I was like, wow, we're in Tyndall a long time. There were certainly things that, like, I picked up on right away, and I was like, oh, man. But overall, I was having such an amazing time at this show, writing these characters. And then Hogan was like, I want to bring back Tony and Anna, and I want to bring back Stefano, and I want to bring back Andre, and I want to bring back, and I was like, oh my God, this is a dream come true. Like,
well, one of the impressive things about this writing regime was that it was the first time in 20 years that anyone acknowledged that Tony DiMera was not Tony DiMera. Well, Tony DiMera had been stuck on an island for 20 years, and everyone else had played it like he had come back.
When Hogan told me that's what he wanted to do with Tony, and that it wasn't Tony who came back from the island, I was like, it's genius. Like, that explains why the whole Kristen story and everything. Like, it makes perfect sense.
Right.
And I loved it and couldn't wait to kind of dive into it. And I loved I loved Andre and EJ, and the fact that EJ was the son. That Susan, like, there was such a connection there that EJ was Susan's son, and Susan and Kristen and Andre as Tony, it all kind of wrapped around. Like, I remember, what was the line that I heard EJ say to Andre? I can't remember it now. Like, you just don't like me because I'm the son that your wife used to get John Black back. And that's how you'll always see me. And I'm being able to write a line like, I mean, I know EJ was aged and it screwed up all the timelines, but being able to write EJ saying that, like, you'll always hate me because I was just the reason.
Wow.
It was a fan's dream come true.
Right.
And I loved it, and I had a blast. I just, would I have done things differently if I was head writer? Sure, but again, not my job. I'm, just there to deliver the best episodes I can, and so that was what I was there to do.
Wow. you mentioned the death of John Black, which was intended at the time to actually be the death of John Black.
Yeah.
You wrote some scenes for that, which you've discussed that were so moving. Well, particularly Hope's speech.
Well, that was
during the funeral.
And I'm so
tell us about that.
Well, when I found out we were killing John, I called Hogan. I told this story so often. I called Hogan immediately, and I said, I don't know what your plans are. I don't know what the plans for what the fallout of this is. I really want to write the funeral. And he was like, do you have ideas? I was like, I kind of had the whole thing in my head. Like, I kind of had the whole thing pictured, how we were going to open the show on a flashback, which I thought would be really cool, and I'd never seen done before. I'd never seen a show open on a flashback. I thought it would be really kind of disconcerting for the audience in a good way, kind of throw them off their game and be like, wait, what? And just the toast and Stefano coming in and Marlena ripping into him and everything. And so I had this, and then ending with Marlena going into her bedroom, and crawling into the bed, seeing his cup of coffee with half of its, half the coffee still in there. And I called and begged the studio to build a Marlena's bedroom set because it didn't exist. I was like, please, we need a bedroom, we need a bedroom, we need a bedroom. Like,
after that whole possession thing, Marlena didn't have a bedroom at that point.
So I called Hogan and I said, I really want to write the funeral. And he was like, buddy, if Hogan is, and I get it, Hogan's written so many funerals at this point where he's like, oh, another funeral. And he was like, if you're passionate about it, do it. Like, write the episode. So I did. And by then, Ed had come on board. Ed Scott as executive producer. And that was so amazing. He was so... Suddenly we had an executive producer who was all about, like, when we said we were going to kill John with the car crash, he was like, we're going on location, we're shooting the body going over the car, let's do this. Like, it was so... And he was tougher, and he had more notes, and I didn't care at all. I was so happy. I was like, bring it on. Like, let's do this. Let's kick everything up 20 notches. Like, I'm all about, because it got to the point where none of us were getting any notes, which was great, but at the same time, you're like, wait a minute, you probably should have given me a note on that. Because we write an episode in 3 days, and then you sleep on it, then you turn it into the network, and 2 days later you get your notes. So by then you have 2 extra days to kind of think about it, and you're like, maybe it would be better if I did this or this or this. So not getting any notes, you're like, wait, but that wasn't that good. I kind of want to change that if you don't mind. So Ed was he was all about making the show better and bigger and more depth and just really stronger. And I'm sorry, Christian Alfonso. So I had written it, and then Jody Schultz, who was a great scriptwriter for Days, she's not there anymore, but she was fantastic, wrote the script. And they ended up splitting it up into 2 episodes because the show was too long. But Ed didn't want to lose anything because he thought every moment was great. He didn't want to lose any moment from the show, so we ended up splitting the show into 2 episodes. And here's the thing: there's one part of Days that I missed as a viewer, and that was the Princess Gina years. I was working. I fell out of Days for that short period of time. I missed all the John, Gina.
You didn't miss much.
But I missed the John, Gina, John Hope,
submarine love
bond. Like, I didn't. That was the one thing. I knew the Bo and John bond. I knew Brady and Vivian and Belle and Sammy and I got everybody else. Caroline, through history, but the Hope John bond I never got. So I wrote it, and I remember the writer's assistant called me, and he was so afraid to tell me this because I love collaboration. I'm not a kind of writer who's like, no, this is what it should be. It should be this. I love being part of a team of people, of producers and actors and writers and people who just want to get together and toss ideas around and make it better. So he was like, I'm really sorry to do this to you, but Christian kind of feels like maybe her eulogy is not, doesn't have the same personal connection that it should have. And she was absolutely right, because I didn't have specific moments to draw from in their history in my mind. And I was like, yeah, I'll talk to her, absolutely, let's talk. I would love this. Like, so Christian got on the phone with me, and like, she was like, can we bring up this? And I was like, yeah, let's do it. Like, tell me more about this story. And she was awesome. Like, really sweet. And again, I was in Brooklyn. She was on the phone. We rewrote it a few times. And I sent it back, and she sent it back. And, she loved what she ended up with, and I loved it too. And when I flew out to the studio, just to kind of visit the studio like a month later, I sought her out, gave her a big hug. And I was like, it was such a great experience being able to collaborate Because World Turns, we do that too. We collaborate with the actors. We talk about their stories.
Doesn't that enhance it? I mean, I think, and Harding LeMay really spoke to the fact that when writers and actors collaborate, you get such a deeper, more meaningful show.
Yes, there are, but here's what happens. And because I hear it from all ends, and I get it from all ends, and I see the yin and the yang. Because... there's situations where Christian calls you about a eulogy, or, Martha sits down to talk to you at World Turns about who she wants Rose D'Angelo to be, considering Martha's a Jersey girl herself, and she's like, I kind of know who this character is, let's talk about her deeper levels, because I kind of get it. That's wonderful. But then you have, the actor who walks in, again, who will remain nameless, who walks in and says, I have a great idea for a story. 4 women are in a car accident, and they all have amnesia, and they all think they're in love with me. And you're like, no, we're not telling a story where 4 women are all in love with you. Like, we're just not telling that story. So there is another side of the coin where some actors just want everything to be me. And so you kind of have to, dodge and weave through some of the politics to figure out who's there to collaborate and who's there to kind of take over the show and steal it from another actor.
Right. Now, going back to the summer of 2007, Days started telling the backstory of how the DeMiras and the Bradys came to hate each other, which had been playing out on and off on our screens for 26 years.
Yeah.
It was finally, under this writing team, going to be revealed as to how and why there was such a vendetta, because that word was said every day.
I still can't write that
the
word
vendetta.
To this day. Even Hawaiian, I can never write the word
laugh
vendetta.
every time I hear it, because that was like every day in 2007 we heard the word vendetta. We were going to know why this vendetta happened, and then something got in the way. What was that something?
I don't think it was one. I mean, what was that one thing? I don't know. I think it was the writer's strike. I think it was. I mean, it was the writer's strike.
So let's talk about the writer's strike.
The writer's strike was we had. It was so weird. I was in California at Hogan. I was staying at Hogan's house, and it was the week before the writer's strike, and we'd heard rumors. We were writing without a contract at that point, I think. And mind you, every time the writer's contract is up, every 3 years, there's talk that there's going to be a strike. Mm-hmm. Every show I've worked at, every 3 years, when the contract's up, it's like, we're going to go on strike, and it never happens. So no matter how much buzz there was, and every show, I remember I was at World Turns, they were preparing for a strike. There's going to be a strike, and it never happened. So, every 3 years, there's a lot of buzz about it. So, I'm not sure if anybody really thought... Some people were like, yes, it's definitely happening. And most of us who weren't in the meetings were like, whatever, they say this every 3 years. Strike won't happen. And I was at Hogan's house, and they just made the announcement that Dina was co-head. And I remember Dina came over to the house and met Hogan, and we laid out... Dina and Hogan and I laid out a bunch of episodes, and it was episodes that aired the last week of January, I think.
This was culminating with the whole cast going to Ireland.
It was
finding
the culmination
Colleen,
of
Shirley Jones as Colleen.
Right. It was. I'm trying to remember. It was all the. I'm trying to remember exactly what it was. All the pieces were in place. It was the soap star winner. The girl who won I Want to Be a Soap Star.
Yeah.
Kidnapped Belle, and Sean and Philip were going to work together to find her, and you were going to find out that she worked for Colleen.
Yes.
And it was, I forget where EJ and Sammy were at that point. And it was Where's Brady, and it was Robo-John, and Marlena, Robo-John and Marlena, and it was kind of getting the pieces in place, and then the writer's strike happened. So literally we had finally hit, the culmination of this story when the writer's strike happened, and it was basically pencils down. You cannot write, you cannot talk to anybody at the show, you can't do anything, you have to just either go home or picket, which I had to fly back to New York and picket in December in New York. It was awful. And again, I wasn't in the writer's strike of '88. I had I was 13 years old at the time. It was so, I was kind of fumbling through what to do. I sat at home for 3 weeks, not doing anything for a while. And then I became more involved in the strike because I needed something to do with my life. I was so just, bored and depressed, and meanwhile, the show went on.
And the story that you had planned...
the story we had planned was very that I'm aware of, was very similar to what aired. It just wasn't going to take place in a week. They were in Ireland, I think, for 6 episodes. And it was going to be like a kind of Aramid / Maison Blanche, everybody kind of meeting in this one big compound, and you play all of that for a month kind of story, like for February Sweeps kind of story. It was going to be, all the stories were going to tie together. It was going to be Sean and Philip were going to track Belle there, and Belle was going to be with the new Brady, and because Colleen had Belle and Brady because she was trying to protect them from Stefano because they were her grandchildren, and EJ and Sammy were going to end up there, and Robo John and Marlena were going to end up there and Bo and Hope on a different track. It was like none of these people were going to know they were going to end up. There was going to be a Friday tag of 3 different groups of people saying, well, I guess we have to go to Ireland, with not knowing the other people were all going. So it was going to be kind of this, everybody kind of ending up in this big compound, and no one knew that Colleen owned it and, lived there, or who she was. And there was going to be, more of a confrontation between Grandpa Sean and Colleen and Stefano, and which I don't know what played out, to be honest, but it was going to be a lot in the real that John was the son. But I think that and the whole thing was that Santo, the promise that Santo told Stefano was, when his heart broke when Colleen allegedly died, was that no Brady can ever be happy in love.
So this was a mandate from Stefano's
That was
father.
the vendetta. Which is why Stefano split up Roman and Marlena. It's why Stefano split up Bo and Hope. It was all about
Steve and Kayla.
It was because Kayla's a Brady.
Right.
It was all about, and even though yes, there was the Lawrence thing with the coffin that we were going to explain that. Stefano got the coffin from Lawrence because it was all about making sure that every single time a Brady was in love, something destroyed it.
What about Kim and Shane?
I don't think we ever got that far in talking about it. We were just talking about how it was going to play out.
Was there anything about him getting Victor to come in and destroy?
We had heard. Well, yeah, there was talk of it, but I mean, and I don't know how. Again, I'm a low-level writer, and things trickle down. I was under the impression we couldn't bring Patsy back ever. I didn't, and she came back 3 months later, so I don't know what happened there, but. I love the character of Kim. I was excited to write for Kim.
Me too.
But I was just under the impression that it was kind of not ever going to happen again. So don't even go there. Was kind of the vibe I got.
But this whole idea that the Bears and Brady's, and again, this was playing out with Sammy and EJ at the same time.
Right, until our souls
all the Brady's would be miserable forever. And we were finally going to get the understanding and the explanation.
I mean, it's not the biggest revelation in the world, but it kind of, I went back
and looked,
in
26 years of story.
That every single time a Brady was in love, Stefano did screw it up in some way.
He faked the death, and he brainwashed and put computer chips and did these horrible things and sent doppelgangers. So this was going to be the big explanation. The writer's strike happened, and what we saw on screen
was kind of a condensed version of it. I mean, it was. I mean, they really. When I heard in the press that Shirley Jones was hired to play Colleen, I was like, "That's awesome!" I was because that wasn't us who did that. So I thought that was incredible, and I thought they're going to do it. This is going to be great. I'm sorry I'm not there for it, but yay, they're doing it. So it was a bummer for me that it only lasted, a week.
Now, during this time, you were using your blog to even before the writer's strike, to talk about your experience as a breakdown writer.
I was really careful, though. My blog for the first... Oh, God. The blog when I was at Days, very little of it was about Days, because I knew I couldn't talk about the show, and I couldn't talk about work. And if you go back... Actually, I think they're deleted now. I think MySpace automatically deleted them. But my first, my first 8 months of entries... I never planned for it to be anything. I never advertised it.
But it took off. I mean, all the soap fans that were online
not at
loved
first.
this.
Not at first. I wrote it for 8 months with only 40 viewers.
Really?
Yeah, I wrote it for 8 months. I never advertised it, and 40 people found me. Jamie Giddens was one of them at the time, and Jamie. 40 people found me, and they were like, wow, there's a Days writer who's blogging. But I was also blogging about my personal life. I was blogging about things that Brian and I were doing on the weekend. It was a very, it was kind of a fun little side hobby. Or I'd be like, wow, getting to watch. I mean, I remember... The day that Tony and Anna aired, I wrote in the blog how cool it was to write Anna and Tony on Days. I was watching them when I was 10. It was so awesome. So it was amazing to talk about it, but I knew I couldn't talk about the process, the show, what went on behind the scenes, so I didn't. And then the strike happened, and I started blogging about how bored I was at home and how much this sucked. And then I was convinced to start walking the picket line to kind of get more involved with the Writers Guild. and I was like, you know what, I'm sitting at home my ass, I might as well just do it. And then I started blogging about that, and I would blog photos from the picket line, and be like, all I want to do is go back to work. And I would say all the time, all I want to do is go back to work. It's all I want to do. Like,
Right.
I feel like I am in withdrawal from a drug. I feel like I don't have my fix.
Well, it was such an amazing experience to use technology to help us feel like we were there with you, like we were going through something.
Well, because so many people were like...
The withdrawal, too. I mean, we felt it. Yeah.
And so many people were like, you know, all these writers, you know, everybody hates the writers. So it was all about like, oh, they're asking for too much. And I wanted to say, well, no, we're not. We're asking for 2%. You know, it's all we're asking for is 2%. And I felt like to kind of put, and then, you know, there were people who gave quotes to the press that even though they had the best of intentions, they made the writers look even worse. You know, like there was a writer who said like, you know, I didn't get a degree to end up working in a Nordstrom's, and I was like, really? Like, you're not helping our cause. You know, meanwhile I was working in retail, and happily I went back to the retail job I had.
Yeah.
2006, my old boss was like, here, come work for me.
Wow.
You know, just so I had something to do when I wasn't picketing.
Was it worth it in the end? And now that it's 3 years later, do you feel like the writers were given what they deserved, or was it worth it?
I do feel
It's a loaded
like...
question.
No, it is a loaded question, and it's not a simple yes or no answer. I do feel like we had to get something. Because when the writers went on strike in '88, it was all about DVDs, VHS and DVDs, which, in hindsight, they needed to go on strike for it. But it has nothing to do with daytime, and it's why they had so many problems with daytime writers scabbing during the '88 strike. Because a lot of daytime writers said, it's about DVDs and VHS, which is never going to happen for soaps. Yeah. Ever. So this doesn't affect us, and you are going to take away our livelihoods. And there was a much more of an issue with daytime feeling like this isn't our fight. Just from people I've talked to. I don't want to speak for everybody. Mm-hmm. This is just conversations I had with people. Mm-hmm. This strike was different. Days was on iTunes for a full year before the strike.
I paid for a subscription.
Yeah.
Yes, I did.
So, and I forget what it is. You know, $15 for a month or whatever it is.
So
I forget what it was.
Like $20 for a month,
or $1.99.
And they didn't load very well, but that's another story.
Well, yeah.
Okay. Anyway.
But yeah, it was. So I felt like this is a different issue. Yeah. Like this, we are involved in this. Yeah. And you're talking about 2% of $1.99. So you're not talking about a lot of money here. You're just saying we want our 2%. If you're making money off of it, we should make money off of it. Like, we get a very small percentage every time our episodes get aired on SoapNet. We get a very, very small percentage every time a flashback is used from one of our episodes later on. I'm talking like $8. I mean, really nothing, but it's something. It's an acknowledgement that we're using your work again. Yeah. Repeated use. So they asked for the same small percent for online, and I just felt like the more I talked to people, the more I thought about it for myself, the more I thought, they're right. Like, we need to get something. We need to establish getting something. We can ask for more and more and more as online gets bigger and bigger, because the problem is no one's figured out that model yet to live off of making online. You know, it's kind of a side thing. We haven't figured out how to make your living doing it. So until that, but we didn't want to wait until someone figured that out to ask for the 2%. Sure. You want to get it on paper.
Be proactive.
Yes, and be like, when this is going to hit, because it will hit. It will happen. It is already happening. Yeah. And we are like a year or two away from it really blowing up.
So did it work, do you think?
We got something.
Okay.
We got something. And
so
for
in
that,
retrospect,
yeah. You know, I know for a fact that you know, one of the reasons that why I was part of the team fired from Days is because I was vocal during the strike. I also never badmouthed anybody, so I felt like all I'm doing is being vocal about what we're fighting for, but I never said, like, you know, Days sucks. Ever. Right. But I do know for a fact that part of the reason, I was told by a few people, that part of the reason was because I blogged about the strike.
The writing team, if my memory serves me, was fired before the strike, like a week before the strike. Yeah. Were any of them hired back after the strike?
No. Everybody who was fired was fired. There were 2 writers from the team who stayed. But yeah, the entire, it was, and my issue with that has always been from day one, because I cannot say enough good things about my time at Days. My year and a half, I had an absolute blast. My only issue with it was that they fired us a week before the strike
Yeah.
ended. That's sketchy.
So after all this time
If
in
they had
daytime,
fired all of us after the strike ended,
yeah.
fine. You're well within your right to do that. Before the strike ends,
So that was really interesting. A lot of insider tidbits there.
A lot of things that I did not know, and I just think it's so fascinating for us as soap historians and viewers to kind of know what goes on behind the scenes and how that affects what we see on screen a lot of the time.
Right. And the story continues with one more part, right?
It sure does. Stay tuned for number 5 of our interview, where Tom talks about his triumphant comeback to daytime on Young and the Restless and what is in store for his future now.